Have you ever heard of the musical The Puppet Master's Regime? Most likely you haven't. In fact, even hardcore musical lovers often do not know the story of this little production. It was a 1934 stage musical, written by anonymous authors of the music, lyrics, and book. It started upcoming performers such as Timmy Cutie Pie Wright, Sally Wilkes, Henry Gregory, as well as many others. At the time, it was the most expensive show to that date. It was said to be the biggest, most spectacular show you'd ever see. From the Testament of Tyler Warwick, 1901 to 1983.
I went to see the show about a week after I turned 33. The ticket was a gift from my sister, who knew how much I loved musicals. God, I remember the signs. They were huge. I also remember the playbill. It was just a single red dot with a doll-like face on it. It didn't make much sense to me, but it didn't matter because I was going to see a Broadway show.
From the Testament of Georgina Long, 1911 to 1984.
The cast was made up of completely new people. Kids and adults alike who were longing to get back on stage after vaudeville stopped being popular. It was quite charming, really. I do remember how odd the whole thing was. All the playwrights and lyricists and everyone were all unnamed. And that playbill. It was a little red drop with a peculiar little face in it. Not even a title. Just that little red dot. I had come to New York with my parents to cheer the family up after my grandmother had died. A Broadway musical seemed like just what we needed.
From the Testament of Carl Hannigan, 1920 to 1993.
I remember the first act. Then again, who could forget? The story was a little hard to follow at first. There was a boy who lived in a puppet shop, or maybe he lived down the street. No, he worked at a puppet shop, but he was homeless, so they provided him a home there. The kid's name was Mortim, something weird. Oh yes, it was Moritum. Moritor, yes. Anyway, Moritor's employer was this old man named Mr. Obsizer. I remember his name because he was so creepy. I think his character was a pedophile. The two of them sang this weird song about puppets. It wasn't a normal song, or at least the music wasn't normal. The lyrics were very enchanting, and the music did this odd thing where the high notes and the low notes sort of mixed with each other. It really set this strange mood. But we thought nothing of it, and the show progressed.
From the Testament of Gabriel Johnston, 1919 to 1976.
This little kid, Moriator? Something like that, had a girlfriend named Trahunt, and this other boyfriend named Ethelbert. Together they talked about how much they loved puppets, and so they sang this cute little song about joining forces to raise money so they could afford to build their own puppet. Then, something really odd happened in the story. The three all headed for school, and they had this really nasty teacher named Madame Reperio, or something like that. They had a reprise of the song from before, and she overheard them. At first, her remarks about the children's fantasies were somewhat comical. But then the light fixed on her, and she sang this heartbreaking little song about, well, that was up for interpretation. It was something about love, but it had all these strange puppet metaphors. Then she just went on this little breakdown. We thought it was this strange character trait. She started singing off-key and went to beat one of the kids. The curtain fell, and there was a scuffle heard on stage. We sort of dismissed it, though. So soon the curtain rose again, and we were back at the puppet shop.
From the Testament of Louis Roberts, 1905 to 1967.
Moritor and his friends went into the town and sang a song about selling dolls, I think it was. Because the little girl made dolls in her spare time, and she had to sell them. I remember those strange background characters. The company was so absolutely monotonous. They all wore some form of dark clothing, and each of them were very, very tall. I can remember how they all had their faces covered up by hair or hats or veils. None of them spoke. None of them even sang during the course of the show. They just walked in perfectly straight lines as if they weren't even a part of the show. Anyways, this strange song about buying dolls, it had absolutely no life. But for some reason, these kids were putting their all into it. I could see the pain in their faces as they hit those high notes. And something else. As the lyrics went on, they seemed to get a little... It is so hard to explain. They all looked like they were dying a little inside. They looked so pale and nervous all of a sudden. It made me just a tiny bit anxious.
From the Testament of Carrie Laurie, 1921 to 1995.
The kids all got their money from this strange man in a cloak who sang a simple little tune. I still remember the lyrics. Despite the fall of rain, little kitties, everyone needs a little song. Wooden dolls give you pain, little kitties. Go on, little kitties. Run along. His character was never really explained, but I remember how truly gripping the melody was. So haunting. It got you right there in the gut. Even the little kid actors seemed a bit unsettled by the new turn of the show. They all kept stuttering over their lines as they spoke and sang. And I still remember when a light bulb over the stage went out, everyone kind of gasped. And one man, I think, even laughed. The noise it made really spooked the little girl. Little Miss... what's her name? All the names were so very odd. All I know is the light bulb had gone out and the actors were stumbling across the stage and the thing looked like a terrible flop.
From the Testament of Marcus Edgar, 1918 to 1968.
So after that light bulb went out, the whole set started falling apart. We, the audience, tried our best to ignore it, but we found it near impossible. The set piece for the puppet shop screeched its way onto the stage, and we could see in the far back the paper sky background falling down. The lights went dim in what we assumed was an attempt to hide the malfunctioning set pieces. The kids, with the help of an oddly monotonous Mr. Upsizer, constructed the puppet, and this strange song played. To this day, I don't know what they were saying. It sounded somewhat like Latin, but
I went on to study Latin in college the next year, and found it to be in no way the language. I remember how it enchanted me, though. It enchanted all of us. We all began to feel this thing course through us. I remember a few people around us who were humming in an attempt to rid themselves of the sound, and I could hear people in the front rows crying out in what sounded like pain. The actors themselves sounded as though they were just about to pass out at any moment. They were doing this odd sort of ballet, and they were tripping all over themselves. And I can remember a few more lights flashing and breaking. We all sat and waited for the song to end, when I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I can't.
From the Testament of George Frank, 1899 to 1999.
The lights were going on and off at random, and we were all praying the damn song would end soon. It had this force going with it. It was sucking us all in. We could feel it. The little kids and the puppet man were dancing all around when... Well, you see, I really thought I could do it. I thought I could do it, but I can't.
From the Testament of Carolyn Mark, 1901 to 1949.
The lighting was completely out of control. It was a mess. And that song, it was awful. But something about it, it was powerful. It had a force. I watched intently as the dancers began to skip around, and I thought they were the lights.
The actual events of the final scene of Act 1 of the Puppet Master's regime has been up for debate for many years. Not many people are willing to speak out about what happened on stage during those final moments. Many believe that there is no actual record of an interview with somebody who was willing to tell the story. This is not true, as one testament survives from a Billy Prescott, who was only 6 at the time of the show. At such a young age, one might assume he was unaffected by what he recalls happening.
I don't remember a lot, because I was just a kid. All I can remember is that song. It was giving me a headache. I turned to Father to ask him if we could leave, when suddenly I saw the stage illuminate with this red light. The music stopped as one instrument after another died out, and I swear I heard pounding underneath the stage. Everyone was questioning what was happening. Even the actors. I remember that teacher lady being pushed through the door of the shop, and some assembly members ran on stage for some reason, and just stopped. I remember a few people started crying right there on stage when suddenly this curtain came forward. It's hard to describe what it looked like. It was a clear plastic wall, and it came down from above. Several years later I saw Carrie the musical on Broadway during one of its few runs. That thing that came down on the prom goers when Carrie was using laser lights to kill everyone. It was just like that. A bunch of set pieces from earlier scenes came down on the sides of the stage, trapping all the actors in the centre. Then chaos erupted. The actors were pounding on the plastic wall when suddenly the curtain flew out and left us in the dark. The audience, at the time, thought it was just a really twisted ending to a terrible musical. We were about to get up when suddenly the curtain opened up again, revealing a single light. And in it was a little boy. Moriarty. He had clawed his way through the plastic wall. We could see the blood on his hands, but I remember how he looked. There were strings attached to every part of his body, like a puppet. Not only that, but we could see his stomach, or lack of, anyway. It was like somebody had put a huge ice cream scooper in his belly. He was sobbing all over the stage, and everyone looked at him, not knowing what to do. And then he spoke. "Help me. Please. Help me," was all I could make out. And then he vomited and suddenly collapsed. The lights all came on and we saw the cast. They were dead. Every one of them looked exactly like the little boy. Everyone had those strings attached, and we watched as all of them, even the little boy, as their strings were pulled on, their lifeless bodies rose on cue, and they bowed.
However, we cannot be certain that this is a credible account. But unfortunately, it's all we have to work with. The puppet master's regime sparked horrible debate among the theater companies. Several audience members had to be treated to special therapy for years to come, and the show itself was covered up by the police. For years to come, the theater company as well as the police department, who had never managed to solve the gruesome murders of the cast of the show, denied that the play ever existed. However, in recent years, the story has resurfaced, sparking much new debate on the subject. The theater that housed the show still refuses to acknowledge the show's existence, and most theater historians know nothing about the show in general. To this day, the identities of the anonymous lyric and music writers are unknown, and all copies of the recordings of the songs and police reports have been destroyed. However, through ancient illegal copies of the interviews and theater records, we can gather a bit of information on the show. The show itself had its first workshop in London during 1928. One of the songs, "Get a Puppet," was recorded with vocals by 12-year-old Garris Creeley. However, this recording has been lost, and is only available in the black market of the internet. Other than that, no official records, that we know of, were ever made. Some ancient accounts say that an illegal taping of the final scene of Act 1 was recorded from backstage, but we cannot be certain that this is anything but a rumor. As for any official memorabilia, very little of anything was ever made for the show to be remembered by. Oddly enough, the show was never advertised, and yet it somehow was well known enough to have booked tickets for several months to come. Playbills from its premiere night were given out. Most audience members destroyed their copies after seeing the show, but legend has it, around 10 to 12 survive. On another note, over the years the show has grown a small cult fan base, and here recently, an off-Broadway revival has been scheduled to premiere soon.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, JC's mom. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, JC's mum.
Happy birthday, JC's mom!
Happy birthday, JC's mother.
Happy birthday, JC's mom!
Hi, this is Jeff Clement. Just wanted to say, happy birthday, Miss Collins. Hope you enjoyed it.
Hey, happy birthday. I hope things this year go well for you. Thank you for tuning in to Master Creep Theater's showing of The Puppet Master's Regime. Today's showing featured moosed up narrations, Morbid Butterfly Circus, Glitched 64, Barnabas Deimos, Jeff Clement, Cabbit, Dimension Bucket, Glitch DLM, and The Creepy Dark.
This showing was edited by me, your not-so-toasty host, Dimension Bucket. And music was presented by the excellent Kevin MacLeod. Thank you all for listening, tuning in, watching. And if you don't mind, go ahead and leave a comment wishing JC's mom a happy birthday. I'm sure she'll appreciate it.